Bienvenue dans Acte, ton nouveau rendez-vous avec la créativité. Je suis Nelly Wanji et ici je parle de création, d'entrepreneuriat et d'engagement avec des invités qui ont transformé leur singularité, leur talent et leur frustration en raison d'être et en mission de vie. Dans l'épisode d'aujourd'hui, nous allons découvrir Nomaza Nongqunga Coupez, qui est une jeune entrepreneure à la tête de plusieurs entreprises qui œuvrent à la promotion des artistes femmes dans l'art contemporain. Elle est basée dans le sud de la France. Elle et moi, nous nous sommes rencontrés en 2018 et depuis, on ne s'est plus quittés. Depuis, on est restés de très grandes amies, des sœurs dans l'âme par notre parcours et notre volonté de promouvoir la création contemporaine africaine. Et il nous arrive parfois de collaborer ensemble pour promouvoir des projets. Peut-être certains d'entre vous connaissent Nomaza, notamment à travers le Conseil présidentiel pour l'Afrique, dans lequel elle a été active pendant quelques années, entre 2017 et 2018, sous la présidence d'Emmanuel Macron. Et depuis, voilà, elle est à son compte. Elle développe des super projets avec des super femmes artistes que j'apprécie énormément. Cet épisode a été enregistré en anglais, qui est la langue maternelle de Nomaza. Très très bonne écoute. Hey Nomaza, how are you?
Hi Nelly, I'm good girl. How are you?
I'm very good as well.
Oui.
Thank you so much for accepting to be part of this.
The honor is mine.
We always have these conversations that we have together. Sometimes we speak in French, sometimes we speak in English. Today we're speaking in English because I think you're more comfortable speaking in English. And I just want you to share a little bit about who you are, what you do. Which kind of woman are you, if you were to define yourself?
So my name is Nomaza Nongqunga Coupez. Yes, Nongqunga. A lot of people would be like, what is that? So that's the click sound from South Africa.
The Xhosa, right?
It is Xhosa.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
So I was born in the Eastern Cape, in a rural village called Ngqeleni. And my father was a mine worker, so my mom never really worked. And my father was a mine worker, so mines in South Africa are located in the middle of South Africa, which is the region called the Free State. So at the age of 6, we moved away from the rural atmosphere, which was an atmosphere of raising cattle, fields, mist, very mystical environment, to a township, which was like houses just next to one another, not enough space, and really adapting into a life that is much more, I don't know if I would call it modern, but definitely not like, because we had lights, running water, or else in the rural. At that stage, there were no lights, and to go and get water, we'll have to go and fetch water from the river. And then literally moving into a house where you just click a button and there's electricity, and you just open a tap in your own house and there's water. It was a huge difference for me at that stage. So I grew up in that township, and that township for me became, it really built up my character. My parents are both preachers, so we were always within different cities in South Africa, meeting people and spreading the word of God. And then later on, because we would still always go back to the Eastern Cape as a child, and for me, there was something very beautiful about the Eastern Cape that I just could not leave behind. So when I did my studies, I decided to go back to the Eastern Cape and work there. So I studied biomedical technology, which has got nothing to do with what I'm doing now.
That's very serious.
Very. So literally for 7 years, I worked in pathological labs and just analyzing, specimens. And it was by far the hardest years of my life. to be able to understand that, the career that you have chosen is not who you are. You are unhappy, but unfortunately, you can't do much about it because in my family, I was the first one to really go and do superior studies. I was the first one to really get a great job. So when I started working, I was already paying for my younger sister's education. So there was a lot of responsibility, which meant that even though I knew that the course I'd chosen was not something that I loved, I did not have the option at that stage to go back to my parents and say, I want to change. So I worked in pathological labs for about 7 years. And during that moment, during those years, I was trying to find ways out. And it's not easy in South Africa to find a way out when you are not educated in that space. We all know that, way outs are through connections and recommendations. Yeah. So my world was very small, and which meant that a way out, I had to figure it out. I then got a job as a medical technologist for a pharmaceutical company called Novo Nordisk. And that for me was the break of my life, honestly. And on one of the trips that we had under Novo Nordisk was to go to Mauritius. And another break came. And that break was when I met my husband, who's French. And then I came to France and another world opened up to me. Second break in my life. So basically, in a nutshell, that's who Nomaza is when we kind of discuss my parcours.
Okay. And how did you came to art? Because I want to say from medical technology to art, it's not very common, because one would say when you're working in medical, you have a certain temperament, you have a certain way of being. It's not really about expressing yourself. It's not even about, it's about researching some kind of truth, because nobody has the truth, right? Everybody is looking for the truth. And then just going from that education to what you're doing today is just, I think you have to say what you're doing today for our audience to really understand what I mean.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Undiscover Canvas and Makwande at Residency. So I'll start with Undiscover Canvas. So Undiscover Canvas is a boutique agency based in the south of France, which is where I am. That promotes young and emerging artists from Southern Africa. So today I have promoted artists from, let's say, Nigeria to South Africa. And that is purely because of the English-speaking nature, because I come from an English-speaking environment. And earlier on, even though I wanted to extend, I also understood that mentality-wise, I was not well equipped to understand the needs of French-speaking artists because I did not know them very well. Which is different now, because I've been in France for more than 13 years, and I've gotten to understand the French-speaking African countries better, because my friends are from Cameroon and Senegal, so that has changed. But Undiscovered Canvas for now has been really promoting Southern African artists. And then there's Makwande at Residency, which is an NGO. So Makwande at Residency welcomes young and emerging female artists, African female artists, into the south of France, where I welcome them in an environment that is residential, where they produce a beautiful series. I take them to museums. They get to really fully live the experience of the south of France specifically. Okay. And through that, they get to open their minds and they get to express themselves artistically quite differently. And once they've produced that series, then Undiscovered Canvas takes it over and promotes it through exhibitions. So those are the two legs that I have: Undiscovered Canvas and Makwande at Residency.
Okay, that's amazing. and how did you come to that? I mean, what was the transition? Like when you arrived in France, were you already into art, or did it become something when you arrived here? Maybe when you became acquainted, more acquainted to museum and galleries, or is it something that was already part of you when you were in South Africa, but you didn't know how to express it because socially, it's not something that your family would naturally push you toward. So, how was the transition from your education, starting as a young professional in the medical environment, and then just like transitioning from that to what you're doing today?
Nelly, in South Africa, there was no way in hell I would have even thought of this. No way in hell. And honestly, even if I had, it would have never worked. You're talking about the environment today. My environment back then, as I explained, I grew up in a township, and in the it was early 200. What we were being taught at school was you needed to be scientific to be able to get a job. At that stage, it was bombarded in us that we needed to do studies that were scientific so that we can be able to get jobs, because that's what was needed for our communities, for the country.
Yeah.
So something that had art, even marketing, even communication, which is things that I'm naturally great in, were never in the topic, especially in the township environment. Maybe in children that went to what we called model schools, which were schools that were, way more because public means, limited resources, and, you're only getting the basic of education. So maybe in Model C schools, there were those conversations where, the type of careers that you can have were more diversified. In my environment, you needed to be a teacher, you needed to be a doctor, you needed to be a lawyer. Those were the things that were given to us as options. So in South Africa, that what I'm doing now was not even an option. However, when I think about it now, I remember that creativity is always is something that has always been in my space. When you're in the township on the weekends, you know what the girls do? They clean the houses. We're all cleaning our houses outside. As we're cleaning our houses, we are literally making designs on the floors. The boys are doing lawns, and as they're doing the lawns, it depends on who's most sculptural. So the guys will be creating sculptural forms with the lawns. I come from a church environment, so in our church, we were encouraged to compose music so that we can sing.
Like in a choir?
Like in the choir, exactly. So creativity was something that was always
it was natural.
It was natural.
It was not even something that you could it's not intellectualized here.
It was not intellectualized. It was lived upon. When I go into my hair at the hair salon, when I do my cornrows, the styles that the stylist will create, all of those things, when you look back, you realize that creativity has always been around us, but not seen in a manner that it can be something that you can have a career in. So what happened was
or something you can trade with,
or something that you can train and make a livelihood out of it. So for me, all of that changed when I arrived in France. So when I arrived in France, my husband lived near Avignon. We lived in a small village called God on the Luberon. And I arrived in June, so just before the Festival d'Avignon, the Festival d'Avignon, the theater. So I went to Avignon, I think about a week before the festival started, and Avignon was completely dead. When I say dead, it was the streets were empty. It's a beautiful city, but the streets were empty, restaurants were empty. You could walk freely. It was a beautiful summer environment. A week later, I arrived. Out of the blue, there are posters all over this old ancient city. Already, I found that to be very dirty at that stage. I didn't understand what is going on. There are posters everywhere. Restaurants are packed. Streets are packed. people are performing on the streets.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, oh my God, that's when the idea that a creative industries had power, because out of the blue, the whole city, restaurants were leaving, shops people were buying, hotels were packed. So that's when I started to, when I saw this, I thought to myself, yay, there is some form of making a living out of creativity. That's when that aspect hit. Now, the aspect of creating an agency, that came later on, because as I was integrating in my environment, I was very curious. So I would drive to different cities. I would visit museums. I would visit galleries. And as I was doing all of that, and I was very close to Arles as well, where we have the photography festival. So I would do all of those things. And as I was doing them, I realized that, oh my God, African creatives, they are not here. If they are here, it's artists with extremely big names. There is no middle or intermediate. There's no intermediate. It's either it's the big or it's nothing. And if it's big only on occasional moments. It has to be a big exhibition that is going to be about, Africa, and then you're going to see an African artist that is going to be put it forward, but not as I'm walking or just entering a gallery or just entering, the cities where they do exhibitions dedicated to different countries or topics. And I thought to myself, here's an opportunity. I am planning on being in France for a while. Here's an opportunity for me. I've already seen that the creative industries do bring about, some form of, economical freedom. I've seen that, African artists are not represented here. Here is a business plan. Here's a business model. And that was, oh my God, at the beginning of my arrival, Nelly, like literally at maybe the first 2 years of my arrival in France. But as you know, it took me more than 4 years to start my first exhibition, because in between that, one needs to understand the market. I needed to understand the French people. I needed to speak the language. I needed also to introduce myself in South Africa as a different person. So all of that took more than 4 years. And in 2017, the process. And in 2017, that's when I could create and do the idea that was born literally at the beginning of my arrival in France.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's just like you embrace that new part of yourself. You didn't fight it, even if it took you like 4 years to properly prepare. Prepare your entourage, like inside Africa, but also prepare the people who know you closer than just like member of your family, to create that bridge and to make it possible to become the person you are today. And I think that's very courageous. I think that's something like a lot of people do not allow themselves to do, and I think it's something that's very freeing, when you can do just what you like and what empowers you, and then use it as a mean to create wealth, of course, for yourself, but also to create wealth for other people. It's just like cheating the typical storytelling about Africa, saying that, well, it's only vibrant, it's only everything everybody wants to think of it, but it's not professional, it's not organized, it's not structured, And I think that's very interesting to shift from your education to that without any transition. And I remember, I don't know if you remember when we first met. Do you remember when we first met?
Was it in Paris? It was. Yes.
Yes, it was in Paris. And I think there was this friend of mine. He invited me to an event. I don't think you're familiar with his company, but what he was doing, he was working for different ministry, like cultural affairs, but he came across working for Élysée. He was doing this helping Emmanuel Macron crew of Africans
Yes.
to gather doers around them and trying to understand a little bit what kind of idea we could bring to Emmanuel Macron.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, I see this girl, and they tell me that she's in charge of the cultural aspect, and I was like, it was just like, wow, I want to know her. What did she do? I mean, how did she came here? And I was very curious about you.
Yeah.
And how did you get there?
Oh
I mean,
my God.
what was the combination for you to be at that position? And how did that position also, I wouldn't say open your eye, but kind of, did it reinforce your willingness to do more for creative and your willingness to also create this bridge, because I'm like, hearing your story coming from a very small village in South Africa and then becoming like the voice of Africans on a very, very important topic, that's a huge responsibility.
Huge.
How do you even carry that? Because me, I'm like, I might be interested, but I'm also like, am I the right person? Am I going to say the right thing? Am I going to come up with the right ideas? I mean, how was it for you? What experience was it for you?
Okay, I think for me, to put that into context, I have to tell the whole story because, and it's beautiful that you're raising this because there were more people that maybe in the eyes of the public were way more worthy of that position than me. And maybe, there were questions on my eligibility, on who is this girl, because I had never literally done any exhibition in Paris. In fact, my first exhibition in Paris, I don't know when this podcast is going to be, this recording is going to be shown next year. But literally, my first exhibition in Paris is going to be in November this year. So I was completely not known in the Parisian art scene.
But I think that's great. I mean, that's great because sometimes you always see the same faces and they're stuck in a system and you even wonder how open their eyes are. So I think it was a great idea to bring somebody with a fresh eye, somebody with no entanglement with the system, and somebody who would not just only do it because you want to serve this person or that person, but do it because you want to serve the people first. And I think that's also a very interesting perspective because I feel like sometimes, especially when you come to Paris, it's a small space when it comes to African art, and it's always the same people. And sometimes you're just like, guys, stop it. It's just like what you would call it in France, like this entre soi. People are just
exactly
things between them. It's always the same things to the same people, and you wonder. It has to turn. It has to be like turning tables. Like shuffle a little bit. Bring new voices into the discussion. And I loved it. And I find. And it was just like, and then people have to discover you, and it's great.
It really was like that. So for how I got into that is, I was very active in the south of France, promoting the artists that I represented, and I was so active that I started realizing that I needed to go to Paris to be able to create support. So I would go to the embassies, the African ambassadors, to meet them and to say to them, you know what, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I'm not looking for funds, I'm not looking for anything, I'm just looking for you to open doors for me. We have no idea how important networking and the power of having people who are interested in what you are bringing are important. So for me, it was strategic to go to Paris and meet up with embassies and ambassadors and say to them, you know what, you represent us here. So as our representatives, it would be great that, when people come here to these spaces, you show the best of us. Yeah. So I was having those type of conversations with different ambassadors, and one of the ambassadors that really loved what I was doing was the ambassador of Mozambique at that stage, Ambassador Alex. And he said to me, we were having a discussion once. He said, Nomaza, I love what you're doing, but I don't know how to help you. And I said to him, you know, when you have these events where you are entertaining guests, it being business owners that are interested in investing in Mozambique, invite me. I will do the rest. Just invite.
That's why.
Just invite me and just introduce me. I will do the rest. So he then invited me on a lunch that he had. And so obviously these events are very power orientated. So if you are not known, you're going to be sitting at the end and with other people, you know? Yeah. So I was there, but I was frustrated because I'm thinking I can hear where the laugh is at, and it's not in my table. You know, that power laugh. So I called the ambassador and I said to him, can you do me a huge favor? Can you take me and introduce me to each table? Because he was a good man, he went. He said, okay. He took me to each table. This is Nomaza. This is what she does. And then I'll pitch. We went to the next table. This is Nomaza. This is what she does. I will pitch.
That's very kind of him. It's
very
rare.
kind. Very kind. I say this. I'm aware of what I'm saying, because I'm saying this to people who are listening to us and asking themselves, how can we help? There's so many ways to help.
Yeah.
He took me to each table and he was introducing me to everyone. Little did he know that in one of the tables that he took me to, and one of the tables that I was pitching to, was the gentleman that was assigned by the president to look for young and inspiring people to be part of the CPA. He did not know me. He had never heard of me. But when he had me pitch who I was and what I was doing in the south of France, when he left, he came in, he gave me his card. I did not even know there was this movement. I'm in the south of France, I'm living my life, you know. Yeah. I did not even know there was this movement that was happening in Paris. I was just there for a weekend. I came back, I got an email on Monday, and this email said to me, but I loved how you talked about Southern Africa, but can you talk about the whole of Africa? What would you do differently? Then I wrote what I would do differently. And in that stage, I did not even know that it was for the president's eyes. I did not know, Nelly. And I said honestly what I was experiencing in the south of France as a Black South African trying to educate French people to see value on African art. And I was clearly saying that with all the history that Africa and that you know, in fact, French-speaking Africans have with France, there is still no respect. There is still no recognition. There is still no understanding. And that is because the people that are here, they are still so much stuck in the 1950s and in the 1960s. And they have a very nostalgic way. I'm coming from an English-speaking country. And even when I do my exhibitions here, I'm still bombarded by this negative energy, you know. I clearly stated all of that. And a week later, I was called to the Elysee, and even then it was another selection, because not everyone that was called on that meeting ended up making it to being members, and I ended up making it to be a member of the CPA, clearly because, as you just said, my intentions of entering that group were never about me. They were never about me, Nomaza. They were not even about Undiscovered Canvas. I did not even think about Undiscovered Canvas when I was in that group. That's when we met. I mean, like, you remember me.
Yeah, that's when we met, yeah.
I was more interested in understanding how we could really create links that would build relationships, especially for the practitioners that were already so involved in promoting African creatives, it being literatures, it being people like you who've been doing it for such a long time in the luxurious luxurious aspect of showing the French people to what extent we you know, we are so far. There are so many of us who are already doing this job. So many of us who are trying, so many of us who are giving our time, our energies, but we are having little support, little to no support.
Yeah.
And my objectives entering that group were literally to say we need to create links so that when President Macron is no longer, the links are so strong that things will just happen automatically, because it's through relationships that we can be able to. I was convinced by that. So that's how I ended up being in part of that group. Now you ask me what I learned.
I think it's just life is episodes, and when you've explored one chapter, you just move to the next chapter for yourself. And sometimes, and I feel I don't even need knowing you now. I feel like I don't even need to know the reason. I'm just like, you just like, okay, I done this. That's it. Maybe somebody can do it now. I have other things to do.
And it was exactly that. I had other things to do, and other things to do that I knew I needed 100% of my attention, and that I knew that I needed to be 100% involved in them to make them work. Yeah. And I thought to myself, it's time for me to go back and continue on the road that I started, because I think on the long run, it will have an impact. And that's why I left the CPA and I continued with Undiscovered Canvas. And a few years later, Makwande at Residence was born.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm just like being a woman, being a Black woman in a space of a lot of men, a space of money and power and influence. There's certainly so many challenges that you have to overcome. First of all, daily, because you have to teach people how to welcome what you're trying to bring to the table. But at the same time, you have to also overcome the challenges of living in a very, very patriarchal world, a space of men and power and heritage, family and their heritage. They don't want to give the space. How is it for you? How do you manage those challenges every day? I mean, what are already like the kind of challenges you have to overcome, and how do you manage them daily?
There are two parts to your question. The first part is woman. And the second part is Black woman. So already as a woman, it being a white woman, it being an Indian woman, a Chinese woman, the mere fact of being a woman, you have, your life is not the same. Your challenges are not the same. Now, being a Black woman,
it adds a layer of difficulty.
There's another crush there. There's another crush that comes with being a Black woman, There are other challenges, deeper challenges that come with being a Black woman. Now, you're talking about a Black woman who wants to play part in a very influential, very money-oriented environment, and who's trying to get a piece of the pie. Nelly, I will tell you right now, my biggest supporters, the people that support my business the most, are not men. They are women. It's other women. And this is a lesson that I learned earlier on when I was studying Undiscovered Canvas.
And it's very contradictory to the story that I feel sometimes the men have created in our environment to say that women do not support women,
Not true.
That's crazy. That's true. Amazing.
I think, obviously, it goes with maturity. It goes with comfortability. It goes with creating your own tribe. It goes with authenticity. There's so many things that happened that you create an environment where you find yourself with a support system. Today, Undiscovered Canvas survives because it has a support system that is mainly made out of women. Um, at first, because the gatekeepers are men, I understood very quickly that me being what I was and who I was, how do I put this? I am married, so I don't want to say people would see me as a charming woman.
Yeah.
With, oh, what she's saying is cute, but you know,
You have other things to offer.
you know,
Yeah.
and to be able to, it got tiring to be able to explain myself over and over to potential investors, to potential partners, whom I could understand that their minds were not where
Yeah.
I needed them to be, you know. So for me, that is something that I understood very quickly, and very quickly I navigated myself into talking and outsourcing and looking for other powerful women, either higher in my space or in my space.
Yeah.
Or even doing what I'm doing. You know very well, I network very horizontal more than I network vertical.
Yeah. Okay.
I looked for other women who were in the same spaces as I, in different spaces, so in different areas where I could outsource energies they could give me and I could take. And very quickly, that for me became a huge support that I built it on, that helped me to develop Undiscover Canvas to what it is today, you know? And that even came even with the artists that I represent. If you look at my portfolio today, I represent more female artists than I do male artists. So that kind of like changed the whole aspect of how I do my business. So if we were to talk about the challenges of the daily challenges of doing what we do as Black women, and for me as a Black woman in the south of France, Nelly, it will take us a year, because like I said, you know, I had to learn that no meant not now very quickly, you know. So I would knock on doors so many times for them to be open for me, but I had to have the courage to keep on knocking on them, because every time they said no, I had to train myself that it was not now.
Not now. Okay.
Secondly, I had to make sure that even though they were saying no, I still invited them to everything that I did, so that I can show them to what point I was capable. So everything that I did, I had to be super perfect in it, to my capacity, obviously, to what I had to work with.
Yeah.
Everything had to be perfect, you know, because in my eye, I knew that end of the day, this no will become yes.
Maybe.
And maybe.
Yeah.
So if we were to get into the challenges, girl, it really is. What I would say to other women who are in the same space as me, especially Black women, navigate yourself and look at other women in your environments that you can be able to exchange knowledge, to be able to exchange projects. You know, if somebody's a photographer, you are doing events. I ended up having chairs, you know, that butter thing you give me. Though that is what
it's like mutually nourishing each other. You know, like, and growing at the same time, not necessarily the same pace, but learning and unlearning things and sharing that. You know, because sometimes we are stubborn, and if we realize there are other people maybe facing the same challenges as us, we can learn from them, learn from their experience. They can share tips, and I think there's a lot of power in what you're saying, you know, because most of the time when people see networking, they see it more vertical than horizontal.
Without a doubt.
And I think horizontal is very, very wise and strategic, because then you can solidify your effort with somebody else, and you know, you can go knock at that door together rather than going alone. You know, and sometimes you just feel tired, and you don't want to be the only one. You know, pushing. If you have like a pack of 3, 4, 5, 10 other people with you pushing, then the resistance is lesser.
Much more stronger.
It's a very, very strategic approach to say, okay, I'm not the only one. This is us. I'm not the only one thinking like this. I'm not the only one doing like this
or feeling like
There's
this.
more of us, you know. So, and I think when people also see that that power of strength and that resistance to no's, they understand that they could either say no and you will keep coming back, or they could give it to you and you will leave them alone.
Without a doubt.
And I think it's very powerful to have that approach, and that's exactly the experience of you I have, because I remember even a very good connection that I have today. You introduced me to her, and today we are like, she see me as her little sister, and she sees me as like her sister, you know. And it's no longer like somebody introduced me to her and I'm like that stranger, you know. And do you remember you introduced me to Tosin?
I know.
I think I know Tosin more than you know Tosin.
I know you know Tosin way more than I do Tosin today.
So it's just, and I definitely...
because that was always the aim, you know, because I knew that you would be able to get way more in that relationship with Tosin that I could at that stage. So because I was aware of that, it was important for me to say, okay, I know Nelly will take this and she will run with it, you know? And I think it's important that especially as a Black woman in France, I'm going to be specific.
Yeah.
Especially as Black women in France, we need, because there are so many of us that are doing amazing things. There's so many. If we were to create a database of us doing amazing things in the creative industry, it would be endless. But the problem is that we are not talking and we are not sharing. And because we are not talking and not sharing, no one is giving that person that contact that they can run with it. It's a question of trust. It's a question of I am struggling. And because I'm struggling, I'm looking at my own space. You know what I mean? And I am focused on my struggles. And this we both know because we are in the same boat, me and you.
Yeah, we're in the same space.
But it does not mean just because I'm struggling, I am not in a position that within this space that I am, because I have people in my database that love what I do, but would never support it because I don't have X, Y, and Z. It's a fact, Nelly. But I know the same people that would also support somebody else if they saw, because it would be in their best interest. Yeah. So when I see this, instead of holding on to them and saying, I'm going to hold on to them up until they see value in me, why don't I introduce them to people that I know for a fact at that moment, they are going to see value and it's going to go.
Straight away, yeah.
And I think
you said it earlier. You said it, it's maturity. And it's also experience, because I have a very funny story. And I remember when I started at the very beginning, when I left my job and I started, nobody knew me. And it was just like, who is she?
Yeah.
And I went to this very influential woman. I'm not going to say her name.
Yes.
And she was like, she actually told my friend, because I think she didn't know at that time that I was friend with that person.
Yes.
But she actually told her that she doesn't want other women to come and, it's not like steal her life. It's just like come and crowd her space.
Can you imagine?
I was like, what?
Can you imagine?
See what I have to bring to her? Even just feedback as a person, you know? Even if I'm nobody?
No, but this brings us to the thing that we are in a world where there should just be one Black woman for this particular segment.
And you know, it changed. After 2 years,
yes,
I was just seeing what I was doing, where I was putting my intention.
Yeah.
She came back to me. maybe she thought I was that another girl who just wants fame, you know? She's in it because she wants to be seen for who she is rather than what she does.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is, to go back to your story, it's that it looks like there is this notion that you either go big or go home, you know? But that's not reality. Rome was not built in one day, you know? And this puts so much pressure to entrepreneurs or people seeing opportunities that they feel that they need to, for example, when you look at my instance, I'm in the south of France, one of the richest areas in Europe. You know, obviously, having a physical exhibition would have been being there, you know, would have made the most sense in terms of having my name known, my notoriety known. But I understood very well that came with implications. Would I be able to sustain the business and pay the rent for at least 3 years to be sustainable? And if that was not the case, what were the other models? Did other models exist? So I had to go and look at different models. What was possible? What would make me grow my name at the same time be sustainable? Because I understood from the word go that there was no way for me to go big, but I was definitely not going home, you know? And I had to find my model. And this is where I think it's very interesting, is that you need to look as an entrepreneur, as a woman entrepreneur, and this is going to really to apply also to males, is that you need to look at what is it that you have. You need to look at what is that you can give, you know? And from that, kind of like create your own model, because, you know, you cannot look at what others are doing, because you don't know how others
you don't
are
know
doing
the
it.
context.
Who's backing them? What is their We know nothing. We know nothing about what happens in anyone else's company, but you know what is happening in yours and the needs that you have. And for that, it's extremely important to look at your environment and to look at your model and to try and apply a model that will make you be able to be there for the longest period, so that you can be able to be in the game. For me, the question is about being in the game.
And it's very expensive. And I think nobody says that to entrepreneur, because when you start an idea, people think that it's going to just blossom within a year or 2 or 3 years. Look at me. After 8 years in this industry, I still feel like I haven't even started to scratch the surface. So it's really also a game of means. Do you have the means to sustain yourself, sustain your business, sustain your energy? Because if at the end of the day you have no energy to put into it, nothing is going to happen. And nobody tells us when we start that what is actually going to take years. You don't even know how many years, but you have to be in it for years.
It's going to take years to be able to get opportunities.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's important, because if I were to talk about my space and my business, I only started paying myself only last year. My bilan was only great only last year that I was able to take money and pay myself. I've been doing this for like 4 years. But most of the time, it was coming in, reinvesting, coming in, reinvesting. And these are the realities of the type of businesses that we are running in. And we won't even enter into the aspect of taxes in France, because then people won't even understand what we're talking about when we're going to talk about the taxes that we're paying. But basically, I think it's important to be extremely realistic and do not measure yourself into anyone, what others are doing. Really be true to yourself. I call that the mirror conversations. You need to have meaningful and truthful conversations with yourself, and be comfortable with the things that you can and cannot do, and be happy with the things that you can do, and be satisfied with that. Because end of the day, I think you agree with me on this. It's all about the journey. How many times have you done something good And that moment of goodness only lasts you 2 seconds. But then the process of getting to that thing nearly took you more than 2 years. How many times?
I think I am definitely the worst, because when it even happens, I'm not longer there, The moment it happens it seems like a very slight moment in time, and I'm not even acknowledging it because my head is already somewhere else. So I really have to teach myself to leave the moment, because sometimes I feel like I'm living too much in the future and I'm not in the present enough to acknowledge that something that I visualized 2 years ago
now
coming to life, and take that and breathe it in and appreciate the emotion and say, I did it. I thought of it 2 years ago. I did it. We will see the rest after. For now, I'm in it. So enjoy it. And I think it has to be it's a skill one has to master, because as entrepreneur, as soon as we have reached a goal, we are already in another goal. And then we always like in another goal and another goal. And we never take the time to appreciate what we already did and to learn the lessons that are needed to be learned to go to the next stage. And I think it's because the space is like that, The space is like that, and it's only, I think, the last 2 years that I've learned to pause, listen to myself, consume the emotion of accomplishing it, and just say, okay, this is the emotion state. I'm gonna stay here. Leave me here for
I'm gonna butter myself with greatness.
Yes, I'm gonna butter myself with it. Let me leave it. All the other things are gonna come later. Exactly. That's something we have to master.
For me, that has been a form of maturity. We're talking about maturity earlier on. And for me, I sometimes sit at home and I feel like doing nothing. Not because I am, because I used to suffer a lot from anxiety, as most entrepreneurs suffer a lot from anxiety, which is, what's next? Am I good? Am I going to be good enough? It's going to work. No. This year, the form of maturity that has come into my space is the type that I wake up in the morning at sometimes and I feel like my body says, Nomaza, go back to bed. And I allow myself that freedom. Because I think with maturity and with experience, I have seen that anxiety has brought me no goodness.
Yeah.
Because I'm an entrepreneur, I always make it. This is where experience comes. When you thought that you would not have your money in your bank to be able to pay your debits, and the day before you have that huge sale and your debits are paid, but you've been worried for the past 8 days
about the money that you don't have in your bank account.
You know what I mean? And for the past 8 days, because you've been living in this anxiety, you've only been consuming this anxiety, and it made me realize to what extent I was being toxic to my body and my body cells. And for me, I guess this comes with experience, but for somebody who's listening to us, I would wish for them to grasp this as soon as they enter this space, that have faith, because faith is a huge part of what we're doing. If you got into this space and you want to do what we're doing, know that you're going to make it. And when that moment of anxiety comes in, don't let it sit for long, because you will make it. But by the time that you've made it, you've taken so much of your time and energies that you would have used productively to be more applied in other projects, but you were more depressed and worried because you did not know if that sale will come through. And I've seen and realized that the sale always comes through.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we do what we need to do. The sale
and
always
comes through. And we are doing what we thought we will do.
Yeah.
And when
you've got that plan and you're executing it well, it happens.
It does.
So having that faith,
and I think the key word is faith. You have to have faith that is going to happen. and don't pollute yourself with the doubt, because the anxiety is exactly that. You're worrying too much about, this person is going to call you because you have a bill to pay, or you're worrying on that opportunity that's going to come tomorrow. And at the same time, you're polluting your present now with all that energy that is not creating anything. So I learned it in my expense, and I also learned it thanks to my husband, because he's very he's very pragmatic. He's like, okay, you worried, right? I'm saying yes. How do you feel? Bad. Okay, try not to worry. How do you feel? Better. Why do you worry? It's very like
why do you worry?
Does it make any difference when you worried and when you're not worried? I'm like, yeah, the difference is like, if I actually don't worry, I put my head to something else, and I'm feeling good, so I'm doing something better. It's like, so never worry about anything. Never. It's like, this bill you have to pay, you will pay it. So rather than stalling the person, call the person and tell them.
Call the person
and tell them your bill, I can pay it, but I don't know when yet. So let me get back to you when I know. But now stop calling me for nothing, because I have nothing else to tell you. So wait, just like, rather than stalling and ruminating and feeling all those bad emotion and killing yourselves, all that toxic energy, put them aside.
Yes.
Just like a blank paper, take a paper, write it on it, deal with it or put it aside.
True. And
go through your day with what you want to go through. If it's your day, it's going to be like, I take a bath and I stay in my bath for 3 hours. Take your bath,
stay and stay for 3 hours. Then after that, go and do something else.
Exactly.
Of course.
Exactly.
Of course. And for me, that has been the. I want to say it has come with experience, because if I hadn't had that experience of knowing that I always make that payment, if I didn't have that experience, that end of the day I always make that sale, I think then I wouldn't be able to be confident today to say that my anxiety does not affect me the way that it did last year. We're not going to be talking about something that is past in the past. We're talking about last year, So I think that comes with having that confidence and giving yourself that confidence and saying and having faith and saying I will do it. It will arrive, because I'm doing everything possible to make it happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm waking up in the morning, because I'm constantly on my sales aspect, because I am doing everything in my power to make sure that it happens, then you cannot control everything.
Yeah.
There are certain things that you're going to have to say to the universe. Please, at this moment, this is beyond my reach. I need you to take control and have that moment and really live it and say, at this moment, this I can't do by myself anymore. No. I need you to step in here. I've gone to my limit, and I've done everything that I need to do. I need help. So for me, that has come with lots of with experience.
Yeah,
for sure.
Experience, and also understanding yourself, because I think at the end of the day, the entrepreneurial journey is also about understanding yourself, understanding your emotions, and managing them,
Oh, because yes. It's a lot about that. Girl.
Yeah, and I think like you or me, we are very tempered people. Like, we take everything. Like, we leave those emotions. And if you don't teach yourself to be very calm when there's a fire burning around you, well, you're always going to be reactive to things. You're never going to be intentional, and you're always going to be like reacting to situations around you rather than like intentionally you putting yourself in a position, you're just reacting to what's happening. You feel like a firefighter. You always have to run and run with the water on little fires around you. And if you don't learn how to be calm and like, okay, it's burning, well, it has to burn. When it becomes ashes, I'm going to look at it.
It has to burn. It has to burn.
Yeah.
And the one thing, because we've been talking a lot earlier on, you were talking about packs, creating your pack. And what you're talking about here, the fact that sometimes as an entrepreneur, as a woman, as much as you're a life giver, you also need to understand when something must die.
Yeah, that's hard.
And for most of us, we have very difficulties with that. And for me, learning as an entrepreneur or as a person, learning to know that there's a moment of giving birth and there's a moment of letting things die, because they must die for something else to be reborn.
Yeah.
That is something that is difficult to kind of like assimilate in an everyday life. But that maturity is needed for you to be able to sustain, because otherwise, as you said, you're going to be like the fireman trying to put fire on everything, and some things must burn down to the ground.
And I totally agree with you. And it comes back to this conversation I remember we had a few weeks ago about, putting your eggs, all of your eggs in the same basket.
We had that conversation together. And you told me, Nomaza, you are the chicken.
We are like chickens. We can.
You told me that. Because I was like saying, Nelly, I feel like I'm putting my eggs in one basket. And you said to me, but Nomaza, you are the chicken. You can always make the egg.
Yes. And I came to that realization not too far ago. Yeah. And when I came to that realization, and I'm like, Nelly, why do you worry? Put all your eggs. If they crash,
they
crash. You give it away. You can cry if you need to cry. Yes. You can laugh if you need to laugh.
Yes.
Then you pause and you come up with new eggs.
And you come up with new eggs. You have no idea. That day when you said that to me, I think I sent you a WhatsApp the day after. And I said to you, I'm the chicken. Because I was having a hard day. And I was thinking to myself, Nelly told me I'm the chicken. And it made me, it because when you said it, it also, it put an affirmation to what we've been talking about. That you always make that sale. Yeah. You always create that environment that results come through. Because we are in action. Yeah. And because we are in action, the results always come. The problem is that process of doing. That moment where you have that idea and the results, that process is the most fragile of all of our processes. And in that moment, that is when really you have to be the master of your emotions. Yeah. And you have to be able to handle all of that self-doubt, all of that anxiety, all of that. Is it going to work? Yeah. Because in just doing that, as you said earlier on, you are able to focus on what needs to happen now. Being in the present. And that's something that we
I think that's, you said it earlier, is experience and also faith, because her experience taught us that everything we thought of came true. Everything we visualized came true. So we have the means to make things possible. Yeah. Now we have to trust the process. Trusting the process doesn't mean not putting into effort. It just means when the process is processing, let it be.
Let it process.
Don't be in a hurry of seeing the fruit, because especially when you're a woman and you know that even giving birth is 9 months, you have to understand that when you give birth to a baby, it doesn't take them 2 days to walk. So how do you expect your business to be like a multi-billion whatsoever in 2 years or 3 years, when it took some other people 20 years, 30 years, or 3 generations to become what they are today, It makes me laugh, because now I think I have the experience of really also tapping into the general knowledge that I have. Because sometimes when you're in the situation, you don't want to acknowledge the knowledge you already have.
You don't
like when you take a big corporation, like today, when you see a young person, they go out there, they see Dior. Do they realize
what it took.
That it took a man who already died for it to be like it is today. And it took another generation of people committing daily into doing things for it to be like it is today. And I see very young entrepreneurs come into this business and they already want to be like that business that took 300 years or 200 years or even 50 years to become what it is, because they don't want to go into the process or they don't have faith that it's possible. And I think that, and that's why I say even trusting yourself is not a trait of character. It's a skill you have to master.
You have to work on.
Yeah, you really have to work on trusting the path, trusting the journey, trusting the process, and trusting that every energy you put out there is creating a new energy that is going to come back no matter what.
Without a doubt.
And you can't control it. You don't know when it's going to be. You don't know in which form it's going to be, but it will come back. So just sit and wait, produce as many eggs as possible. Maybe you think they're crashing, but you will see a lot of,
Afterwards, you'll see a lot of little chickenlets coming out. But it's well said. It's well said, Nelly. It is exactly how you put it.
So we just have to trust the process and committing to strengthening our lines, because and I really like having this conversation with you, because at the end of the day, it also strengthens my beliefs, because is when you're in it and you don't see other people who are in it, you feel alone and you feel like what you're living is very exceptional.
Exactly.
And it's hard for you to learn the lessons. But when I have this conversation with you and I have the conversation with other women in these spaces, I feel like what we have to do today is just to get together and get organized and get structured in a way that all the energy that we're putting out there is serving us directly or indirectly, And it's exactly what you said at the beginning. It's like, if I have a contact in my phone and I know that putting you in touch with that person today would create more wealth or more opportunities in your space than it will in mine, I should do that, because at the end of the day,
I'll come back to you.
Exactly.
I'm coming back to you.
Exactly.
It is as simple as it is that. Forms.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something we need to learn.
We have to learn that, and the quicker, the better. Yeah. We do not become, we are social entrepreneurs. We must not forget that.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely important to also understand that we are social entrepreneurs. And being a social entrepreneur, it sometimes feels like being a philanthropist.
Yeah.
Philanthropist.
Yeah.
Yes. Because most of the time, you are literally giving out. And when you give out, and this is something that I had to learn very quickly, is that when you give out, do not expect to get back.
Yeah.
Because that expectation, if it does not happen today or tomorrow, then one way or the other, it's going to destroy you as a person, because you have expectations of others, I think that as a social entrepreneur, there needs to be that understanding that everything that you are doing it for yourself. And giving out sometimes is not about the other. It's also about yourself.
Yeah. I agree.
This we know, because we're working with artists, we're working with artisanal, we're working with creatives. And sometimes I've had artists in my portfolios that I give so much that they become bigger than me. They become bigger than the agent.
Yeah.
And I have no bitterness in me or trying to see, sometimes they get even more opportunities than I get.
Yeah.
Because they are exposed and they're doing well. But that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I know
that's exactly the result you want.
That's exactly the reason why I'm doing it. So now, if I'm going to be expecting too much, then frustration and all of those negative emotions will harbor in me. So I take that and I also apply it to my collaborators. Take the same energy and I apply that to my collaborators, and that is me giving you something. I'm not expecting you to come back and give me something. There's no expectations. But Nelly, strangely enough, is that things that are good always come back.
And I agree. And I think you have to be living in full consciousness.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with. That's where I'm going with this.
Exactly. Of who you are and what is your role. Be it spiritual, be it physical. When you understand that your role is to create those opportunities, you don't expect
your mindset changes.
You totally shift from
this capitalist mindset that we have. You understand your role in all of this.
Exactly. Your role is to unleash their greatness.
Yes.
And as soon as you've unleashed, it has to go to the greatest extent. Yeah. If they become bigger than you,
then that's the point.
You've
done the job.
Is you becoming bigger. Maybe not on the physical aspect, but on the spiritual aspect. Everything you unleash make your halo bigger. So everything you empower, everybody you empower, they become the greatest the human eye recognize.
Yes.
Wow. Go and see how greater you've become spiritually.
You know what I mean?
I think that when I realized that, I didn't fight. I stopped fighting for physical acknowledgement of my greatness. I'm like, I know how great I am, so I have to trust myself that, be it in this physical life or abstract part that people cannot see, that you are great because you created that. So it was the goal was never for you to look like you were greater. It was for that thing that you created to become bigger than you. And that's the essence of, being part of something that is bigger. You know that your role is just to pass the baton. Is to create the opportunity and pass the baton to the next person. And I think it requires a lot of self-confidence, but also a lot of consciousness of us beings in a space where we never knew. We don't know the math of creating a human being, We don't even know the math of living, and we don't know the math of dying. So why do we want to control things around us? We should just give our contribution to the, to the whole thing, and stay aside and appreciate the greatness in us. It was given to us. It's not us who went and took
Exactly.
It was given, so we should give it away.
I often think, Nelly, about my life in general, and I think about the odds, What are the odds that a South African woman born in the environment that I was born in would be doing what I'm doing today? When I have the artists coming into the south of France and they get to experience that aspect of living here, and I see it in their eyes because it's not something that's given. How many residences do you know in France that would intentionally invite female African artists? So when I say that and I realize, you learning this language, you having to persevere so much had its reasons, and look at it now playing out. And it's exactly what you're saying. When we do this, I think, we're acting in a space of luxury. We're playing in a space of lots of money and lots of wealth, and you can be easily you feel like you are lacking because you are not there. But when you then kind of like align yourself and you realize, what are the odds? What are the odds? I have to have those conversations with myself quite often. And when I then say to myself, what are the odds? Then I realize that I'm exactly what you just said. I'm a giver.
Yeah.
And the more I give, I might not get back materialistically, but as you rightfully said, I get back in something that is way much more abstract.
Yeah.
And I think this this is our responsibility.
Yeah. It's our role.
It is, Nelly. Our responsibilities, because we are not the first generation, the second generation, third generation. They've been before us, but we are doing it in this space. We are able now to have communication with others, which we don't have records of people who were doing this before us that we can take their knowledge from, so we are archiving what we're doing so others can be able to learn from us. And I think it's important that they understand that when you enter into this space, that materialistic aspect, that importance, there's an importance that exists in the space that we're in. There is that need of being the first. We're not the first. It's important to say that.
It's very naive to think that you are the first.
Very naive.
Yeah.
What we should be talking about is why did the others that were before us did not get to have these conversations now and be in the same spaces as the other ones that they started with. Those are more important conversations we should be having as Black people in France rather than being the first. I think that we need to be able to tell the young ones that are coming in that your role is different.
Yeah.
That this model, it does exist, but there are these models that we're creating that combine, yes, the materialistic aspect of it, because we are going into this business making money. It might take longer, but we are getting money.
Yeah.
We are making the shift. But even more importantly, know why you're doing what you're doing. And there are a lot of companies that are huge, but without any meaning anymore. We are still working with that, especially us within the creative industries. We're still working with that. So know your center and know that, your role. And I think that would allow all of us to kind of look at each other as equals and be able to share. When you understand what is your role is to give.
Yeah.
And the universe will give back.
Yeah. The universe gives back in ways you cannot even expect, Yeah. You don't know you're the universe. We're just like borrowers, It's like there's a landlord above us.
Above us.
And we are not paying any rent. And we feel like, I'm here. It's great. But do your part. Do your part. What have you done to be here? You have to be grateful. And giving to others without knowing what is going to come back for you.
Yeah.
It's just like the same your mother gave birth to you. You didn't know what you would become in life.
Yeah.
She just gave birth to you. And I think we should feel the same about her ideas, about her companies, about the people we hire to work with us. My biggest dream is always like when I'm hiring somebody, I always I hope I can pass on the energy that I have so you can create something bigger than I did. Because now when you create that thing that you will create after maybe working with me, or even if you take over what I'm doing, you will be doing it with the strength I already put in it. And it will mean that everything I've put in it will not go to, to the trash. It's just like multiplying and multiplying. Doesn't matter in what form and how, if I have ownership or not. I just feel like I'm grateful to contribute. I'm grateful to do my part and to sleep every night knowing that I've done my part and be in peace with myself, knowing that I gave everything I could give to this cause, so it becomes something or create an opportunity for somebody else that I don't even know yet, And I feel like if we come to this creative space with this mindset and with the consciousness that we cannot build anything alone, we just get together. And everything just flourishes.
The magic happens.
Exactly. And I feel like that's just the little thing that we are lacking. First of all, maybe us as women. Second, Black women in Europe. And third, people in the world, knowing that coming together, putting the intention of creating something that is going to serve more than just yourself is the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate truth about life, Otherwise, you just pass through, you just pass by, and you don't know why you were here in the first place.
Why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I here?
So I really became like that with a lot of experience, and I think it helps also accepting that something that you put out there will die in the physical form because it had already served the purpose of why it was created.
That's why
so let it die and move on to the next thing. And it's very difficult because, then you want to put all your emotion and you feel like everything you've done, it was for nothing. But it was not for nothing.
It was never for nothing.
Never for nothing. It already served its purpose. So move on to the next thing. So Nomaza, how do you balance? Because, I think as a young woman, when you started and the woman you are today, more mature, and also, how do you balance that, all that process? Because there's a process of uncertainty, but it's also a process of becoming more conscious, becoming more aware, and strengthening the faith you already have and building up and up and up and growing and becoming somebody you couldn't even expect. How do you balance that with the day-to-day? Because, all this abstract concept that I'm coming with is not like the reality daily, but I feel like we should do like that every day. How do you balance that?
But Nelly, it is the everyday, because once you understand that, the everyday becomes easier.
Yeah.
But how do I balance? I'm lucky, Nelly, to have arrived in France at the age of 28. Because I then arrived with a very strong identity. I knew who I was. I had lived a very successful career in South Africa that I gave up freely to move to France to be with my husband. So there was no bitterness on my part when I needed to take time to be able to integrate, understand this country, fall in love with this country, learn this country, but at the same time, be Nomaza, be the Xhosa girl from South Africa in France. And for me, that is the biggest gift that I carry. That is, I'm a very cosmopolitan woman. In fact, I'm applying now for my double nationality. But even there, everything that I am is still very much so African. So identity for me is my base. And identity does not only just come from being a South African, it comes from being an African. It comes from my heritage. It comes from my ancestors. With that, and understanding that very well, that for me grounds me. When everything is shaking left and right, that is where I get my source. The second part is, as I said earlier on, I come from parents who are pastors. So I was at a very young age introduced into faith. And then I discovered spirituality in my own format as an older woman. And for me, that also is where I go, where I'm the weakest, where I'm the most, when I have the most horrible panic attacks, when I'm feeling the most sensible and I don't know where to go and I feel like giving up.
Yeah.
You know those moments where you think to yourself, I think I've got a great CV. Maybe I should put my CV on LinkedIn.
and then you pinch yourself.
You know, when those moments arrive, then my spirituality is also my anchor.
Yeah.
On a practical sense, the question that I always ask myself, Nomaza, what is the next best action? Every day when I wake up, I'm very disciplined in that aspect. That is, I wake up depressed or not depressed, I'm going to wake up. I will acknowledge how I'm feeling, but I will wake up and I will sit and I will try and do what I need to do until I come to a point whereby I understand maybe I don't need to do it at this moment because it's too deep. Then I can go and take a nap and come back. Discipline is very important as an entrepreneur. So even the aspect of just waking up and taking a shower, having that routine, discipline is very important, and having that idea of what is the next best thing that I can do now. Okay, I cannot do the big thing that I want to do, but what is the next best?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it to wake up? Then I must wake up. Is it to shower, brush my teeth? Then is it to put on my computer and look at my emails? Then I must do it. What is the next best action? I always say that every day. What is the next best action? And that maintains me in being in the present.
And being in motion.
And being in motion. Because I know that things will only happen for me if I provoke them.
Yeah, when you're doing
my method of provoking things to happen is to be in motion. So I'm very clear on that. And for me, those are the three things that really drive my lifestyle as an entrepreneur.
Identity, faith, and being in motion.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's it should be everybody's motto. It should be everybody's motto. What is your takeout? What do you want to leave in this? What do you want people to take out and take away from our conversation? What do you want to pass on this conversation?
I think that, it's very clear because I've repeated it so much. Me and you have suffered so much. Me and you have suffered so much in isolation. And it has cost us a lot. I would love the young women listening to this podcast to really take note of that and know that whatever it is, whatever adventure they are going into, they are not alone. They must seek out others in their spaces. Talk to them. There is nothing wrong with saying how you're feeling. If you're feeling bad, you need to have a person that you can talk to about your difficulties. You need to have that person that you can run ideas to. You need it's a support that is so necessary. And I would love the young women that are listening to this podcast to know that they are not alone. Find your tribe. Find your tribe. Nurture those relationships with your tribe, and grow with your tribe.
Yeah.
If there was any message that I want, is that find your tribe, nurture it, and grow with it.
Very empowering. Very empowering. I wish somebody have taught that to me at the beginning when I started. Because I feel that's exactly what everybody needs, a support system or a shoulder to cry on if need be, or just an ear to listen and somebody to share ideas, kind of another mirror, allowing another person to give you a feedback, an honest feedback, not not a ass-licking feedback, no, a really aware feedback saying, okay, I think you're a great person, but here you're doing shit. You have to come back to, whatever. And I think having a space like that when you feel free to be vulnerable, to be yourself, to be all version of yourself, not just to be your likable self, but also be your fragile self or your shark self. We also need in our spaces to be all the version of ourselves, but be very conscious about what you want to create and come in those spaces with the intention of creating something greater than yourself and being being generous, because being a creative person and creating art is about taking risk. It's about exposing yourself, exposing your thoughts, exposing your dreams. So be more generous in those spaces too, because sometimes I feel like if you just come to those spaces to take, nothing will be given to you, because you gain more when you give. So you really have to be in that position of giving, 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 nurturing each other, and creating something that is greater than all of us. And that's really the energy I always feel when I'm in a conversation with you, or when we're working together on building a project. Is this trust we have built across the years, and saying that you can trust that I have your best intention at heart.
Best interest at heart.
Yeah, yes. And you can trust that even if it looks ugly, because it has to. And you know, that's life. You remember when I was closing the gallery, and we were planning on having an exhibition together, and I just honestly told you, girl, this is stuff. It's not gonna happen. I can't put myself through this. I didn't like that episode. It was not enjoyable, but it's something we needed to do, and now we're working on our next project together. It's taking another form, but that's what it was meant to be also. So I feel like we should just...
And look at us today.
Yeah, you know, who have imagined, you know, even for 1 second, that it was possible. And that's why I'm very, very grateful. And I don't even want to be in control anymore, because I'm like, everything I thought I could control, everything that happened to me was bigger than what I thought I could.
And you had planned for yourself. You know, Nelly, what you're saying is so powerful, in the sense that, you know, those stupid questions that they ask us, what do you see yourself, or how do you see your business in the next 4 years? I know it's something that, you know, obviously you must look ambitious and kind of like understand what is it that you want to be in 4 years. And I always think to myself, everything that I'm doing today, everything that I've been able to do yesterday, day before, is not anything that I even thought I would be able to do in the next 10 years. You know what I mean? And so I'm very conscious of that, you know, and that is because I'm in action.
Yeah.
You know, the third aspect of what I said, action. Because I'm in action, you know, there's no time.
Yeah.
There's no time. Everything is now. Everything is possible.
And there's no limit to what
there's no
possible.
limit.
Yeah.
And there's no limit.
Yeah.
And look at us now, like I said.
Thank you so much, Nomaza. And my greatest wish is that you always stay like you are. You never change. Because I think you still have so much to give to, be it me, other women. And I'm very, very admirative of the way you manage your artists. And when I look at your Instagram, and you're like displaying a new artist, and your journey together in the south of France, the way the person is creating art, it's so poetic, it's so generous. It's really the essence of art to me, because I feel like even if you just stop there, you already created an emotion in me that is greater than the result that is going to be an art piece from that artist. It's the message that you really share with all your projects is always like, let's be generous. Let's allow herself to enjoy herself. That's when I see your art, and I see the art from the creative you pick, and the picture you create. You're just like walking by the beach. I don't know I can only imagine the kind of story you're sharing with each other, and you're creating your relationship, and you're so generous, and you share it with us, you know, and you remind us that that's art. Art is about taking a moment and being vulnerable with somebody else. And it's for me, at the end of the day, it can be very abstract in that way. Art is not necessarily a painting. Art is not necessarily a sculpture. art is that intention of creating a space within which you allow yourself to be your true self and share it with another person. And it's something that has no price. I mean, you can't value that, you know, you can't put a number on that. That's something so precious, so fragile, but also so if I don't know how to say ephemeral in English. Ephemeral is like a lapse of time. You can't grasp it, you can't hold it, you can't do anything with it but enjoy it.
It's
and
tangible.
That's amazing.
It's intangible, but it's there.
That's amazing. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you
Keep
for
doing just that
art with me.
And you already have millions, billions success in her spiritual world, and it will only manifest in the real world, be it your generations after you. But every picture, every art that was created is the legacy you created. You allowed to be created, and you made it possible. So just for that, for me, you're already a success. And I just want to say, keep pushing to create more opportunities for others, and for others to be conscious of how generous you are and take it, grasp their part in it, and enjoy the moment. So thank you so much, Nomaza, for taking the time today. And we hope, I hope everybody who's going to pass through this episode is going to grasp all the energy and all the generosity you have, and, include that in their life, and remember and remind themselves when they are in a bad mood or whatsoever.
Yeah, bonk. Yeah, bonk.
Thank you so much. And, well, let's be in touch. We still have so much work to do, so.
We do.
Have a very good day. Take care. Kisses.
Kiss. Bisous.
Bye bye. Si tu as aimé cet épisode, alors c'est à ton tour de passer à l'action et donner un coup de main. Pour cela, il suffit de noter le podcast avec une note 5 étoiles et un commentaire sur iTunes, Apple Podcast ou d'autres plateformes d'écoute pour permettre à d'autres comme toi de découvrir cet épisode plus facilement. N'hésite pas également à partager autour de toi avec tes amis, tes collègues et notamment sur les réseaux sociaux en me taguant pour me donner un vrai coup de boost. Si tu veux me contacter pour me poser des questions ou me donner tes feedbacks, n'hésite pas à aller sur le site www.nellywanji.com ou me joindre sur les réseaux sociaux, LinkedIn et Instagram de préférence, que je consulte régulièrement sur mon profil Nelly Wanji. J'espère te retrouver très prochainement dans la communauté ACT. Tu trouveras tous les liens et références de cet épisode dans la barre de description. À très vite.